Hi, in this video we will talk about the graphical description of the three trigonometric functions. So we already saw that sine, cosine, and tangent are functions. We saw the domain and the range of each one. And here you have explanation about the periodic style of the functions. For sine and cosine, we have a period of 2 pi. For tangent, the period is pi. Before we look at the graphs and try to sketch them, let's look at the unit circle here in this GeoGebra file. When the value alpha is 0, sine is 0, that's the y-coordinate, and cosine is 1, that's the x-coordinate. And when we change alpha, look what happens to sine and cosine. Let's focus first on the sine, that's the blue line. It goes up from 0 to 1, and then goes down from 1 to 0, and then down to -1 and back to 0. The cosine starts at 1, goes down to 0, down to -1, back to 0, and back to 1. If you want to see the graphs, let's do the circle again. And here you can see the graphs. You can see sine goes up to 1, back to 0, down to -1, and back to 0. Cosine starts at 1, goes down to 0 and -1, and then up to 0 and +1 where it started. If we continue and make another rotation, we will have the same pattern repeating. Here in this graph you cannot see the other value, but it goes over and over again until infinity. Let's see how to sketch the graphs of the functions. We start with sine x and begin with this xy system, where on the x-axis we have units of pi over 2 and pi, and the y-axis is between -1 and 1. These are the possible values. We'll start with marking the points where sine x equals 0. That's 0, pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, and so on. And of course the negative, -pi and -2 pi. Let's add the points where sine x is at 1 or -1. So pi over 2 it's 1, 3 pi over 2 it's -1, 5 pi over 2 it's 1, 7 pi over 2 it's -1. Here minus pi over 2 it's -1, and then +1. We have the main points, so we can try to sketch the wave-shaped function. Let's start with this. This is half the circle, and then the second one. And it continues. And so on. Also, for the negative part, we have this shape. And it goes on and on. If we add degrees here, this is 0 degrees, this is 90 degrees and 180, this is 270, 360, 450, 540, and so on. And here you have minus 90, minus 180, and so on. Okay, let's see a nice drawing of sine. And here, let's see, for example, one of the values we know, that's 0.5. Sine equals 0.5. So we can look for values where sine equals 0.5. For example, this value, this is 30 degrees. And this one is 180 minus 30, that's 150. We can see 0.5 also on the next cycle. This will be 390 degrees, and this one will be 510 degrees. Also on the negative side, this is minus 210 degrees and minus 330 degrees. This is where sine x equals 1/2. Let's look at the cosine function. Again, we start with an xy system where we mark the units of pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and so on. Let's see where cosine equals 0. It's on pi over 2 and minus pi over 2, 3 pi over 2 and minus 3 pi over 2, minus and plus 5 pi over 2 and 7 pi over 2. Let's mark now where we can now sketch the graph, starting here, and here's the full cycle of the cosine, and we can continue. Also to the negative side. And it goes from minus infinity to plus infinity. And that's the cosine graph. Here it is in a nice drawing with the degrees. And here's a drawing of the sine and the cosine functions together. You can see that they have the same shape, only they are translated horizontally one from the other. Next is the tangent function. Tangent x equals sine x over cosine x. Here we'll start with an xy system with pi over 2 units on the x-axis, and the y-axis should go from minus infinity to infinity. Let's see the main points first. For sine x equals 0, we know this is so for x equals 0 plus or minus pi plus or minus 2 pi and so on. We'll have 0 over cosine x, and the tangent x is also 0. For cosine x equals 0, that's for plus minus pi over 2 plus or minus 3 pi over 2 and so on. We will have sine x over 0, that's division by 0. And on the graph, we will have a vertical asymptote. Let's mark these points on the graph. We have 0 where sine is 0. And we we have vertical asymptotes for pi over 2, 3 pi over 2, and so on. So it's going to be this way. Also on the negative side, we have a vertical asymptote every pi. Let's try and sketch the graph. For example, we can start here and go up to infinity here and down to minus infinity here. This is one cycle of tangent. We can do the same to the next one and go on and on. Here is the tangent graph. You can see it here in a nice drawing. Notice that the cycle of tangent is 1 pi, not 2 pi as in sine x and cosine x. We can add the degrees here. This is 0 degrees, 90 degrees, 270 degrees, 450 degrees we have asymptotes, and on here we have 180, 360, every pi we have 0. We can also see one exact value. We know, for example, that tangent of pi over 4 or tangent 45 degrees is 1. So here is 1. And we can see here the pi over 4 or 45 degrees. You can see it also here on the third quadrant. This is 5 pi over 4 or 225 degrees. And also here, this is minus 3 pi over 4 minus 7 pi over 4, all tangent equal to 1. So now you know how to sketch the graphs of sine, cosine, and tangent. It will be very helpful for you in demonstrating and understanding other questions in trigonometry. So thank you for watching, and bye-bye.